I'm absolutely thrilled to be sitting down this morning with the incredible Beverley de Valois. Beverley is a true pioneer in integrating complementary therapy and specifically acupuncture into cancer care. With over 25 years of clinical and research experience, Beverley has been at the forefront of exploring how acupuncture can support those navigating the often overlooked consequences of cancer treatments. As a Fellow of the British Acupuncture Council, an Honorary Research Fellow at the University of Bristol, and a Council member of the British Society for Integrative Oncology, her contributions to the field are nothing short of extraordinary. Beverley's work within the NHS has shaped how we understand and apply complementary therapy and acupuncture in cancer survivorship. And her book, Acupuncture and Cancer Survivorship, Recovery, Renewal and Transformation, is a must-read for any passionate complementary therapist who wants to work in this vital area of care. This conversation is one I know you won't want to miss. We'll be diving into her pioneering research, the power of complementary therapy and acupuncture in post-cancer treatment recovery, and most importantly, what this means for practitioners like you who truly want to make a difference. So without further ado, let's jump over and join Beverley now. So Beverley, it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you here with me today. Welcome to Tpot Education.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a delight to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Beverley, you have an incredible history, and we're going to delve sort of into that and talk about this incredible body of work, your new sort of baby and your new book that I haven't been able to put down myself of late. But before we delve into that, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? What got you started into the world of complementary therapy and then specifically into your acupuncture journey?
Um, I think it was one of those midlife changes. I was working in IT. It wasn't very satisfying. I think I always had a, a thread to my personality where I wanted to help people, but it wasn't really very well developed or articulated. I think as a child, when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't really get a lot of support from my family in that aim. And then I guess in my midlife, I'd been experimenting with a lot of complex. I was interested myself in complementary medicine. I I had a yearly project every year. I would select a therapy and I would have it, hopefully for the duration of a year, so I could really kind of find out what the benefits and effects were. And then big changes in my life happened, and I trained as an aromatherapist, and started with that. And while I was doing that, I was working with a meditation teacher, and she suggested I read a book which was called Death of a Woman, which was about a woman with breast cancer, and it was written by one of um, Jung's, the psychoanalyst, his acolytes, who it was back in the 60s. Nobody ever talked about cancer. This was quite a groundbreaking book. And whatever the content was, I just remember putting it down and thinking, I want to work with people with cancer. So that so as an aromatherapist, I started knocking on doors and trying to um, so I began knocking on doors and trying to find places who would welcome me, cancer places that would welcome me. And of course, as so often happens, the doors don't open when you want them to. So I took a sidestep, and in that, then there was a charity located in London called the Immune Development Trust, and I became a volunteer for them, and then eventually they placed me in a locum position in the North Middlesex Hospital, and I was working with the HIV and AIDS patients there. But at that stage, the HIV and AIDS patients and the cancer patients were on the same ward.
Mm.
And so one day I was doing my work, and this woman came up to me and she said, I'm the lead nurse of the Macmillan Cancer and Oncology and Palliative Care team, and I'd like aromatherapy for my patients. Would you be
Nice.
willing to do this for me? And so that was my kind of, come on in.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's kind of where I started to realize that dream of working with people with cancer.
And that's incredible, isn't it? As you say, I mean, even now people have struggled to kind of talk about it and talk about the benefits of integrating um,
Yeah.
complementary therapy,
Yes, yes,
sort of.
yes.
But back then, I can imagine that was a pretty hard journey to take.
Yes, that Macmillan nurse was named Elaine Clark. I'm still in touch with her to this day. She had a very enlightened view, and she really wanted these therapies for her patients, and so it was great. I worked on the wards. I worked there one day a week. She would often say to me, "I don't know where we're going to get the money to pay you this week," and by the end of the day, there would be money there to pay me. And I worked on the wards, and then we set up an outpatient clinic. And the first research paper I wrote was a kind of service evaluation of that
Mm,
aromatherapy service.
yeah,
So she was really valuable for
yeah,
um, setting me on the course.
incredible. And
Yeah.
what was the learning over that period, Beverly, in regards to kind of, obviously you're entering into this new world of applying these skills with people going through cancer journey. What did you see at that point? Who were you treating? What were the key things that people were
Um,
wanting your support for?
well, I was treating people on the ward, so I was treating people who were in very, very um, tough circumstances. So these were people who were having really acute reactions to treatment. They were often very late stage patients. They were people who perhaps were being held in hospital when they should have been in a palliative care center. So I was looking at people, I was working with people in really great physical and emotional distress, often people who were at end of life and not in the appropriate place.
Yeah,
So it was very interesting. It was quite challenging. The nice thing about one of the learnings about that, and which would later shape my acupuncture experience, was that I was very much welcomed into that oncology team. I was one of the team. I wasn't just the fluffy
yes,
complementary therapist. I was welcomed as part of that team. My opinions were sought on things, and it was wonderful that the nurses would brief me on the patients. Any questions I had, they would answer. So I increased my understanding of cancer quite
yeah,
a lot there in that situation. Um, and I think also what I learned there was the importance of some form of evaluation of your service.
yeah,
And so this isn't always possible it wasn't possible with patients on the ward, late stage patients, and you don't really want to bother them with questionnaires.
yeah.
But certainly we wanted to evaluate the outpatient service
Mm,
because um, and particularly then, I mean, this was almost 30 years ago,
yeah,
or 25 years ago. And the medical professions weren't really aware of what it could do. They would agree to send their patients to these for these treatments, but it was kind of a nice thing to do,
yeah,
well, yeah. So we wanted to start putting it on a more serious footing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. And we'll come to this a little bit later on because you've had an incredible career doing some in such insightful research that has empowered and enabled all of us. But tell me about the journey then from aromatherapist into acupuncturist.
um I think when I trained as an aromatherapist, I trained at gosh, I can't even remember the name of the school, but it's so long ago. Um, but the principal of that school was Gabriel Moj, who
Mm,
himself was a five-element acupuncturist,
okay.
and he taught aromatherapy very much from on the energetic principles of Chinese medicine.
Okay.
And this was very interesting. And he talked about tongue and pulse diagnosis,
Wow.
but this wasn't really part of the course, but he would talk about it.
Mm,
And so once I qualified, I thought, this is really interesting, and I want to know more. I want to know more about this. And again, it was a very turbulent period in my own life, and I started having acupuncture and found it extremely beneficial. And so I said to my acupuncturist, I want to do something more. I want to do something more medical because people will come for aromatherapy,
mm,
but it's kind of the first thing when there's a financial um, crisis in their lives or something. It's kind of the first thing that they'll cut.
yeah.
So I want to do something that's more medical and is perceived as being more medical, if you
Yeah.
like. And I was thinking about osteopathy, and so my wonderful acupuncturist, she set me up with an osteopath in her clinic, and I observed for a morning, and I had an acupuncture treatment for the afternoon, and I said, osteopathy is definitely not for me. So I really don't know what I'm going to do. And she said to me, had you thought of becoming an acupuncturist? And I went, no. And 6 months later, I was at the College of Integrated Chinese Medicine in Reading studying, and the rest is history, as we say.
Fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it? And actually, as you know, I also studied at the College of Integrated Chinese Medicine, although didn't quite sort of qualify quite as long ago as you did, as we only graduated on Thursday. But it's
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a real journey, but it was interesting to me. We had quite a big cohort in our group starting back in 2021, and it was amazing to me how many people had come from having acupuncture themselves, having been
Yeah.
guided, from getting real results, whether it was psycho-emotional or physical, but had had such meaningful results through the relationship with their own acupuncture that they'd just gone, actually, I need to pivot. I need to completely change what I'm doing, and this is
Yeah.
where I'm heading.
I often say acupuncture transforms lives, and it transformed my life, just from having that. And I was a needle phobic, and
Okay.
and and my
Really
acupuncturist,
interesting pivot.
my acupuncturist, should point any kind of medical needle at me, and I will faint, and have done since I was a child.
Okay.
So and I think I was quite a challenge for my acupuncturist, because I think somewhere about the third treatment she said, "Do you actually think acupuncture is the right therapy for you?" Because I mean, yes, it is. It is. It is. And it is.
Amazing.
I still have acupuncture regularly. It's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's an incredible medicine, isn't it? And yeah, the depth of it. I always just feel like I'm still very much at the bottom of a mountain looking up, and but the exciting thing about the medicine is it's one of those things that you can never know enough about, can you?
Indeed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Evolving and whatnot, and what a privilege to be part of that. But it touches every part of our lives, doesn't it? And the five elements, the beauty of Kikkum is that blend of traditional Chinese medicine and five elements acupuncture.
Indeed. Yeah.
So incredible that your aromatherapy principle kind of integrated some of that knowledge and kind of planted the seed there.
Indeed. Yeah. That was a very lucky start.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did that translate then, sort of then back into your clinical practice? Were you able to kind of broaden your reach then? And how did that enable you to sort of move more into that kind of medical, clinical sort of setting that you've done such incredible research about?
So I started my acupuncture training at the same time as I started working at the North Middlesex Hospital as an
Okay.
aromatherapist. And when I qualified, I wanted to offer acupuncture at the North Mid, but it wasn't. I discussed it with Elaine Clark, who was the Macmillan lead nurse,
Mm,
and she didn't feel that the hospital was quite ready for that.
okay.
But something that she had done, she as well as paying me. and supporting me to write a paper, she would send me on training,
Mm,
and to cancer conferences,
okay.
and so I began to network and develop a network, and I met at one of these events. I met a woman called Pam Thorpe, um, who worked at the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center, which was the Cancer Care and Information Center at Mount Vernon Cancer Center.
Mm.
And so we kind of got to know each other on the circuit. And one day when I was in that frantic state of trying to finish off the requirements for my acupuncture course, she rang me up and said, do you know anyone who would like to do a job share at Mount Vernon as the complementary therapy coordinator? And I didn't take the hint, and I was trying to think of people. And eventually, she said, "I'm asking if you are interested."
Fantastic.
And so I said, "Well, when I finish my course, which is it wasn't far away. It was maybe a couple of months away." And she said, "Well, okay, then when this job advert comes out, you apply for it." So I applied and I got the job, and that was as the complementary therapy coordinator at the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center. And the deal was that if you had one of these kind of administrative posts, you could practice your therapy for one session a week.
Oh, okay, amazing.
So at the interview, I said, although my experience as an as an aromatherapist, I'm coming to this job as an acupuncturist. I want to give acupuncture to people
Mm.
with cancer, and that was agreed. And then I took the role on, and nothing happened, and nothing happened, and there was no 3 months later. There was no sign of this acupuncture clinic happening. So I began to ask questions. Why? And they said, well, we're not really comfortable with a non medical person delivering an invasive therapy like acupuncture.
Mm.
Um, so, um, so first they wanted guidelines, and in those days, the British Acupuncture Council was very much in its formative years, and
Yeah.
there wasn't very much to give them except for a double-sided A4 sheet of typed information.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I persisted. I was very persistent, and eventually, Dr. Jane Marr, who was the medical director, said to me, "Well, if you really want to have this acupuncture service, what you need to do is some evaluation. We evaluate all our therapies before we offer them as a service." Um, and so that kicked off my life as a researcher.
Yeah.
Um, so the nice thing about the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center was that it had, because uh, Jane Jane Marr was a visionary, and she felt it was important to research and evaluate things. So
Mm.
when she was setting up the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center, she had a research wing in it, which was
Yeah.
called the Supportive Oncology Research Team.
Okay, amazing.
So I began to work with the person who ran that. That was
Mm.
Teresa Young, who just became embedded in my life, and we worked together for 25 years on acupuncture research together until she retired last year. And so that kicked off my first project, and with the issue was that women were coming into the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center. They were experiencing very distressing cancer treatment related hot flushes.
Mm.
And could acupuncture do anything about that? So we began to do a research project, and we did. I eventually gave up my role as complementary therapy coordinator and was moved over to full time as the research in the research wing. We did a study on using body acupuncture to address these breast cancer treatment related hot flushes. And I will never forget the day when I went in and Teresa had done the analysis on the statistics, and she just said, it worked. It
Wow.
was kind of like, She was amazed and I was amazed. And so then we decided to do we took that on the road. The great thing about Teresa was that she was very good at um, helping to develop me as a researcher. And
Mm,
so she would get me to present at conferences. She would encourage my writing up of these things. And so we took this out on the road. And at one conference, a medical acupuncturist came to me and said, "This is a very good result and it's very impressive, but couldn't you do something that's a bit more easy?" So I thought about it, and I had been working a lot with the NADA ear acupuncture
yeah.
protocol. And so we did a second study of um, doing, uh, looking at that. And that was good. The result was good. It wasn't quite as impressive as the body acupuncture, but even before, almost as soon as Teresa pressed the button on that analysis,
Mm,
the Linda Jackson Center decided to take that up and develop a service and to train non-acupuncturists. As you know, NADA can be delivered by non-acupuncturists in the UK. So they train non-acupuncturists to deliver it. And that service was there in place for 15 years
wow.
until COVID.
Mm,
Because I had, we, Jane Marr was a great believer in collecting data.
mm,
And I had this very much instilled in me,
mm.
much to the sometimes irritation of the complementary therapy team. You have to collect this data. We don't want to collect this data. You have to collect this data.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so when the crunch came with COVID and the service was closed down,
Mm,
and by that time they decided they wanted to refocus it as
mm,
well. But we had 15 years of data and we
mm.
could analyze that. And this is an incredibly rare thing
Yeah,
to have
absolutely.
to have a 15-year service evaluation.
Yeah.
So we published that. That was kind of our output from COVID. Um, and that, yeah, so that was a interesting start with an amazing kind of long story, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Phenomenal. And it's, as you say, it's great you've had people to help shape and sort of develop you in that way to kind of collect that data, interpret that data, use that data.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's the teaching for the rest of us, isn't it?
yes,
That
yeah,
information becomes absolutely invaluable in helping, everyone else apply that learning in their own clinics and practices and what
yes, yeah, yeah.
and everyone sort of wins as a result of that research. And you've done some incredible research, Beverley, as you've touched on there. I mean, groundbreaking stuff. Tell me about that journey as a researcher. As you look back at that kind of younger you starting in that initial service evaluation to now, obviously, sort of creating sort of great bodies of work like this and achieving your sort of PhD. Um, Talk to me about that research journey and what the key takeaways from that experience.
Okay. Well, when we started the ear acupuncture service, I think I'd always wanted to do a PhD.
Mm,
And Teresa was very supportive of that. Um, so she supported me in going for a PhD. So I got a part-time job. I was so busy in, in those days because I worked part-time at the Linda Jackson Macmillan Center. I had my own clinic, my private clinic, and I took on a role as a senior lecturer at Thames Valley University, which is now the University of West London. And
yeah,
that role gave me the opportunity to do a PhD as a member of staff.
yeah, amazing.
And so the two studies, the two hot flush studies, then became my PhD.
Mm,
Um, which was it was very challenging doing that. I think we before we you and I were having a discussion about how
Mhm.
challenging it is to do the acupuncture course,
Yeah,
the study, but doing a PhD took it into realms beyond that.
yeah, yeah,
But it was, I think, looking back, um, a PhD is an opportunity to just certainly in my case, I could set the subject matter that I wanted.
yeah,
I had that I had that really wonderful and quite unique um, setting of being both in an academic setting and an NHS setting, and an NHS setting which had a research department that
yeah,
would support my style of research.
yeah.
So that all came together, and I could do this study about hot flushes, and so I
Mhm.
learned a lot about it. And I think one of the big learnings there is was um, the one that I always tell people, treat what you see. Don't treat what the books tell you to treat what you see. And the real learning for me was getting into clinic, and at that time there wasn't as much literature around as there is now, but at that time the idea was that all hot flushes are kidney insufficiency.
Yeah.
And in fact, that isn't really true. So I designed my protocol for kidney insufficiency
Mm.
and got into clinic, and was the tongue presentations were completely different
Yeah,
than what I expected. So
yeah,
this is my mantra: treat what you see, treat
yeah.
treat the presentation that you
Mm.
see. So yeah, I guess that
And
was
that's an
one big
incredible, I
learning.
mean, just that statement in itself, isn't it? I mean, our mantra at Teapot is always, treat people where they are, and it kind of, translates, doesn't it? It's that
Yeah,
method as, you know, yes, of course, deepen your understanding, get the knowledge, get the sort of experience behind you. But as the client arrives, meet them where they are, learn about who they are in that moment, and
yeah,
treat what they need in that moment. And of course, that's deepened then with incredible diagnostic school, tools like pulse and tongue and things like that to sort of
mm,
help, paint that picture and deepen that sort of picture up and above what a client would tell you in a normal complementary therapy sort of consultation. uh,
yeah.
to
The
really,
other the other answer to your question is I occupied a strange space.
Mhm.
I'm was a practitioner researcher, and that was very important to me, and that was very, very difficult to justify, because in research terms, you want to separate your practitioner from your researcher.
Yeah,
The criticism is that um, by um, by holding both of those positions in my research, I was introducing bias.
yeah,
I would want those things to succeed because I would want to be a good
yeah,
practitioner. Now, we mitigated that because the data were collected and analyzed by someone else,
yeah,
but I was writing up the papers.
mm,
Um, but what I think was valuable about that, and what I can see now looking back rather
mm,
than at the time, my interest is really in the patient journey and what happens to the patient. I'm far less interested in the statistics. And
yeah,
they are an important part of the story. So for me, it was really about doing these. I mean, as acupuncturist, and as you're a Reading trained acupuncturist, um, we were taught to do certain procedures at the beginning. We were taught to begin our um, treatment with um,
a,
an AE
yeah,
drain, an aggressive energy drain.
yeah,
And so I designed my studies around that
mm,
to begin with. And then I would, as I went on in my studies, I would follow that with um, an internal dragon treatment.
yeah,
So I really got a really good understanding of how people responded to those treatments.
mm,
And that's just something I draw on every day in clinic, that understanding, and understanding. So I was very interested in how people reacted, not
yeah,
not necessarily the outcomes were interesting and the
yes,
statistics, but
yeah,
also, and really, to for me it was about exploring um, what happens when you apply these things in clinic and looking at it in a systematic and rigorous way. So I have a lot of data about what happens to people when they have an AA drain. I have a lot
Mm.
of data about what happens to people when you introduce an internal dragons treatment.
Yeah.
And so um, so I think that a kind of unsung part of my research is that but it's what I'm doing in my training. I've taken that and try and take it forward. You know,
Yes.
this is how you can use these, and this is what I think they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that that is the beauty of the practitioner researcher kind of role, isn't it? And one of the reasons why I'm so keen to see, people do more of that as practitioners, because yes, they're best, they're best placed because of that practice. But of course, there's complications and potential bias. I know I took a lot of convincing at Kickham to let me do a pilot study for my dissertation and sort of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
patients and sort of do it. Initially they were like no, and of course it's easier, I guess, to kind of talk sort of more hypothetically, but I really wanted to be able to put into practice. I'm also a clinical talk therapist, so doing some clinical hypnotherapy with the nada auricular technique and see if that in itself decreased people's clinical scores with general anxiety disorder. But it was so important to me, rather than just go kind of just look at what was already out there, as to actually put it into practice, because I'm
yeah,
with
yeah,
real people who are desperate to get their anxiety scores down and to live more freely and comfortably and
yeah,
sort of at ease. And so to me, I was like, well, I want to put it into practice, because you're giving me all this theory, but I want to apply it for myself,
yeah,
see
yeah,
what
yeah,
comes out and what happens. And I think that's that partnership of sort of practice and research is what's so phenomenal, but quite unique, as you said. I mean, I don't actually know anybody else who's done the level of practice and research that you have, and in such a specialized area. And that's why that learning then is so invaluable, because it's not just one or the other, is it? It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
those
yeah,
incredible sort of
yeah.
skills. And so, I mean, what's your advice to people out there, Beverly, who are looking, I mean, whether they be acupuncturists or touch-led massage therapists or complementary therapists that are really keen to sort of do more research? You said you started with kind of service evaluation, and things like that. Are there areas of research that you believe are kind of an easier entry point for people who are keen to look at getting into more research or developing their academic skill set in that way?
Yeah, I think one um, methodology that's open to everybody is to write a case study.
Mm,
And there are guidelines for how to write good case studies. Good case studies, I'm a big fan of writing case studies. And if you've read my book, you can see every chapter has a long case study and many shorter ones as well.
mm,
Um, and these are I don't know if you know, there's a research hierarchy, a triangle, and
mm,
case studies are really at the bottom of the hierarchy, but they're very important. They're back in the day when I was doing all this work, starting out, they were really frowned on as being inconsequential and
yeah.
and and not important. But they have things have changed, and now they're seen as being important contributors
Mm,
to the knowledge, um, what's sometimes called the knowledge mosaic of
yeah.
what we would know about a therapy. And they help to inform other practitioners about uh, ways that we use things or
Mm,
innovations and things like that. Or when there are challenging presentations, how do we deal with them?
yeah.
And so any practitioner can write a case study, and
Mm,
ideally, there are um, mechanisms within the professions for publishing case studies. I mean, now there are more and more journals, scientific journals that will publish case studies. But certainly, in my experience, the British Acupuncture Council has a journal for
mm,
members called the European Journal of Oriental Medicine.
mm,
That again, that was another key. tool that helped
Yeah.
me establish my career because that was where I could publish my case studies and
Yeah.
things. And so that was really good experience for me to be able to write for a journal, to learn how
Yeah.
to write a good case study, and to share that information with my
Yeah.
colleagues.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's a
As
good
you
way.
say, that's great, isn't it? Because if you can kind of write up more of your direct experiences via case studies and also share them and get them published, and your networking, as you mentioned earlier, such a key part of going to conferences and attending networking events and sharing and having broader discussions. Then on that, they become great talking points, don't they? To kind of
Indeed,
keep
yes, yeah,
moving.
yeah. And I think although it's very, very challenging to do, I mean, I was I'm not sure if I still feel this way, but when you write a case study, it can be very challenging. You're putting you're exposing yourself,
Mm,
um, and you're exposing yourself to the people saying, "Oh, you've done it the wrong way," or "I wouldn't have done it that way." So it's really important to overcome that
yeah,
inhibition. I
yeah.
think the other thing that is really good, and now when I write case studies, if I write a case series, I try and present a variety of things. So I will try and present a case of someone who does really, really well in
Mm,
this therapy. But I also want to present someone who didn't do well
yeah,
and why that might be. And so it's this openness about not just sharing the successes,
yes,
but sharing that sometimes it doesn't work.
yeah,
And also I like to include people who are really complex,
yeah.
who haven't gone the direction that I thought it would go, and how I've
Mm,
had to adjust.
yeah.
So I'm trying to be honest and open about clinical life because that I don't like the case studies that say I needled heart 7 and the patient burst into tears and then was fine forever.
Yeah.
Not like that, and it
Yeah,
doesn't or it's not often like that, it's
yeah,
often more challenging, so,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's really, really important, but also what comes through in all of your work is the authenticity and integrity of what you write and that genuine sense of a diverse exposure to clinical sort of experiences and that is it's as important, isn't it, to see what challenges you faced and what things haven't worked as the stuff you've learned,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's
because
the learnings in all of that,
yeah,
isn't it?
'cause these patients aren't easy, they're not
Yeah,
straightforward, they're complex.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
unique. I mean, that's the key as well,
indeed,
isn't it?
yeah,
And particularly with things like cancer, which is their own
yeah,
bodies, sort of mechanisms turning on themselves. It's even more personalized and unique for them. And,
yeah.
and tell me about that, Beverly, working within the clinical setting as you have for most of your career. Often, complementary therapy, although I think, some incredible work done now with many, sort of associations, Yes to Life, British Society of Integrative Oncology and stuff, flying the flag for integrating and the importance of that. And now it's much more readily than I know when Robin, who launched Yes to Life, would have found it sort of 30 odd years ago when he was considered an outlier and, completely woo woo.
Yeah.
What's your experience been in that, working in the field of oncology? At the beginning, as you said, that, it took a lot to kind of get your foot in the door to kind of to use acupuncture and to use acupuncture in that clinical setting. And what was the kind of reception for the rest of the oncology clinical team to that? And how have you seen that change over your career for better or worse?
Ah, thereby hangs a tale. I'm still trying to get a body acupuncture service installed at Mount Vernon Cancer Center.
Yeah,
So, I did manage so most of my work there has been in the research context.
yeah,
The service that was set up was the NADA service, which was manned by non-acupuncturists who were taught the NADA air
yeah,
acupuncture protocol. Um, for a brief time, we had some charitable funding, and that we used. And I started up. I had a clinic alongside the um, gastric and colorectal
mm,
oncologist, and I worked alongside him for about 3 years.
yeah,
But that was at Barnet Hospital where he had a clinic. So Um, I would say, in answer to your question, my own personal experience has been disappointing in trying to get that going. I'm awaiting eagerly information that that might be changing, but it may not be. And so it's been tough, but other people have managed it. Other people, there are some wonderful, thriving services in the linked to the NHS um, that help people, that support people with cancer with acupuncture.
Yeah.
But there are also some that have been started and have been axed. So it's a mixed bag
Yeah.
and a variable.
And so, magic dust, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, what's your hope that, your research um, and publications like this are able to, set standards and sort of show the clinical excellence and the sort of outcomes of these applied sort of complementary therapies, and particularly in regards to acupuncture with your own work. What's your hope of what that will achieve, or what it could or should look like if we were truly integrative?
Um, I think it would be. It's quite difficult. What I would hope is that there is a more widespread willingness to include people like acupuncturists, or to include therapies like acupuncture, because acupuncture has got really a very good evidence base now, um, as part of the multidisciplinary care of people living with and beyond cancer.
Mm.
um, and and to have that manned personed by people who are trained as we are, and who have degree equivalent
Yeah,
qualifications, and not simply to have uh, physios or medical professionals who learn a few techniques to do this.
yeah,
I don't know how realistic that is, but that's what I would like. And my, I'm very keen on post cancer treatment care for people. I think it's very difficult. This is a big gap in
mm,
medical care. People are kind of treated, and that's fantastic. They get very good treatment, but then they're let go. And now that I'm back in clinic a lot, what I'm
yeah,
seeing are people who are completely lost at the end
yeah,
of treatment, and they are having real trouble coping. They're kind of just let go, and they feel abandoned. And,
absolutely.
acupuncture is wonderful for just coming and scooping up that person and saying, and often what I do with it is not just the treatment, it's just reassuring people and telling
Mm,
them this is how it is at the
yeah,
end of treatment. So there's nothing wrong with you per
yeah,
se. This is how it is, and you will get through this.
yeah,
This is temporary.
yeah.
That's important. They don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah. No,
Um,
and I agree. I
yeah,
mean, I run a clinical practice 2 days a week, which obviously now is integrating TCM, but up until sort of November of last year was purely talk therapy. And a lot of people I see with sort of cancer are those who are 3, 4, 5 years post treatment, who just feel now their friends and family expect them all to be okay and just be happy with the fact that it's over, and
yeah.
they're living with this
It's not.
constant narrative of, but what if, for every niggle, every pain, every lack of sensation, as much
Yeah,
sensation, and actually depression levels absolutely plummet
yeah,
at
yeah,
that point as well. And as you say, often a lot of the support people get whilst going through treatment, has got better and better, and they feel
yeah.
cared for. But then there's a real sense of abandonment, isn't there? Often.
Indeed, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's fantastic, and I don't hold out much hope that clinics will be starting in the NHS or the associated cancer charities for
Mm,
that, because I think funding and all sorts of things are a big problem. But
Yeah.
certainly, my mission statement. My mission is to spread awareness of cancer survivorship, the issues that people post-treatment face
Yeah.
when their cancer treatment ends, and to spread awareness of how acupuncture can help. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And beautiful that you've seen it both from the touch-led side of it with the aromatherapy, which is where Tpot's kind of passion has always been, is to this is where people need us more, right? I mean, not if otherwise we're only treating people who are well, and that's a very
yeah,
different, setup. And most of us got in to help people look good and feel better. And so actually touch is such an incredible human connection, whether it be
it is.
touch and
Yeah,
sort of just spending time with each other, or physical sort of touch and connection. So
yeah,
complementary therapies have such an integral part of the solution, don't they? They're such an incredible
yeah.
sort of resource for us all to lean into. Um, Tell me about this book, because I mean, not only is it meaty and it is a true body of work that clearly is, sort of a reflection on an incredible few decades flying this flag. But obviously, this kind of released last year, didn't it?
2023, July
2020,
2023. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
2023.
yeah, yeah,
And acupuncture and cancer survivorship. I mean, it's not just for acupuncturists. So, we
yeah.
advocate this for all of our complementary therapists, because there's so much information in here about cancer and oncology care generally, and the types of things people are dealing with. Obviously, the modality you're evidencing most is acupuncture, but actually, it's just an invaluable resource for complementary therapists. So, tell me about birthing this baby, Beverly.
Okay, well, thank you. That what you're saying is music to my ears, because what I had hoped when yeah, although it is focused around acupuncture, what I had hoped is that it would have a much wider reach and appeal. And
Absolutely.
it's great to hear you say that, and I get that feedback from
Yeah.
some of the reviews that come through. Um, yes, 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 yes.
You were telling me earlier it was 11 years
It was
from
11
pending.
years from the moment I conceived the idea. So one of the when I finished my PhD studies,
Mm,
I then went on to apply for a grant because I was very interested in lymphedema, and
yeah.
this had been an interest that raised its head back in my aromatherapy days, when the consultants would send me their patients with lymphedema
Mm,
for massage. And I knew instinctively that this was not the right thing to be doing, but there was no other care for it. So I've had a deeply ingrained interest in lymphedema and
yeah.
the lack of appropriate care that's
Mm,
available for them. And so I applied for a grant to do some study about using acupuncture and moxibustion. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, moxibustion is a heat treatment that we use in Chinese medicine. And I was at Thames Valley University, and I was telling one of my PhD supervisors that I was interested in this, and she kind of looked at me in great shock, and she said, "We have one of the world experts on lymphedema in our department. Didn't
wow.
you know?"
Wow.
So this was Professor Christine Moffat,
Yeah.
who is the head of the International Lymphedema ILF Federation. And so she became involved in this, and she said her advice was don't try and treat the lymphedema. Look at using acupuncture and moxibustion to improve quality of life for people with
Mm,
lymphedema. And so that's what we did, and we got the funding and we did the study, which to this day remains the only study that's been done on something other than focusing on change in volume measurement in a
yes.
lymphedemic arm. We looked at breast cancer patients and head and neck cancer patients. Again, that was unusual. Nobody was looking at head and neck cancer
Mm,
patients. And this our main outcomes, we were not concerned about volume. We were concerned about their overall well-being. And so this was a study. So out of this study, one of the participants in this study was just an amazing woman. And she was very articulate and very good at expressing the effect that acupuncture had on her. And she is the one patient in my whole career that I would say taught me the most about acupuncture and
Wow.
possibly about research.
Yeah.
So I was presenting her case study has just been embedded in she's my poster girl for acupuncture, my poster girl for lymphedema,
Yeah.
and poster woman, really, I should say. And and I'm also still in touch with her. So I was presenting at a British Acupuncture Council conference on my lymphedema study, and when I finished, I just remember walking out of that room, and I had presented her case study, and I thought, this needs to be communicated to the world. So I need to write something about this. I need to write a book. Thinking a book would be easy. Well, 11 years later,
Because you weren't doing
um,
anything else at the time,
well,
Beverly.
no, 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 and there were lots of challenges. I was so used to writing research papers that
Mhm.
it took me a long time to find my own voice. And the first publisher that I worked with, because I went through a few publishers as well, um, uh, just said you need to say this in your own voice. And so it took a really long time just to develop my own voice,
Yeah.
and then pulling it together because it kept changing shape. Um, I did kind of exhaust and wear through that poor first publisher who was really very helpful and supportive, but we decided eventually to part ways. Um, so yeah, it took that long, and then of course because it took that long, I had to go back and I had to keep updating it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until when COVID hit, I just said to my husband, I am going to take a sabbatical. I am
Mm.
going to finish this book because it had been a big black cloud over my existence
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
those years. And so I worked really hard to bring that together and get it out to publication. And
Yeah.
yeah, and the two publishers that I worked with to do that were just really great and really supportive
Yeah.
and helped me get it out there. So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it is absolutely an incredible body of work, and we'll put all the details sort of below of how people can get hold of their own copy.
Thank you.
As
Yeah.
I say, it should be in every complementary therapist's sort of collection for sure, because it is just absolutely jam-packed with insights on sort of cancer and cancer survivorship. But
Mm.
also, I think, as I said, even if you're not an acupuncturist, looking at the case studies and kind of what you've tried will kind of make sense to every style of massage therapist, aromatherapist, reflexologist,
Mm.
sort of out there as well. So it is an absolute sort of invaluable sort of body of work. And yeah, I hope you are super super proud of having birthed it into the world and made it available after 11 years of kind of
I
toil and
am.
struggle.
I am now. Um,
Yeah,
the book is dedicated to Val Fier, who um, just was my inspiration.
yeah,
And um, just a couple more points. One is, yeah, the case studies are, again, as I referenced before,
mm,
really showing the complexity. And so even if you're not an acupuncturist, they take you through the ups and downs of treating
absolutely.
people. I'm not just talking about one treatment, I'm talking about series of
Absolutely.
treatment over time.
Mm,
But I think the other thing that makes it useful to people other than acupuncturists is the structure. What I've tried to do is present the problem, the challenges
mm,
to the cancer survivor, the Western medical way of treating that,
yeah,
then the Chinese medicine way of doing it. I look at the evidence base. I look at my clinical experience, and then at the end of every chapter, there's a long case study, so you
yeah,
can go through and see just the ups and downs
yeah.
that face us as clinicians and face our patients. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's such an important body of work, Beverly. And like I say, thank you
Well, thank you.
for me and all of the complementary therapists that I know will find that so invaluable, because I've been in the area specialising in oncology care for massage now since 2013, and it's just one of those things that you're just the more you kind of unpack, the more you realize there is to sort of unpack. And of course, as you mentioned, every client who comes forwards experience and interpretation is different, and to be able to adapt to meet each person where they are, and to be able to have more insight, more research, more conversations around what's working, what isn't, and in very particular and specific cases, and to see that in real time,
Mm.
rather than sort of generalized, is incredible. Alongside your research, which again we'll add some of your research papers to sort of the links, so that our community can kind of access them, because I think they again are really insightful and sort of absolutely great reads. And I
Thank
think
you.
will be really inspiring. And we touched on it sort of earlier before we started recording, didn't we? We have across the spa and sort of wellness industry, which is typically where Tpot have taught, we've got a lot of complementary therapists who are so passionate about the practice that they're part of, and love doing what they do. But a lot of their training involves just new brands they're working with, and new sort of property protocols and health and safety and compliance based training, and they don't often get encouraged to really deepen their skill set, or deepen their academic learning around their kind of treatment modalities. And so we are always trying to encourage people to kind of learn more, and to go and do their level 4s and 5s, and sort of to enter into complementary therapy at degree level. And I know those options are not vast, but they are there, and they are really important. And so from your point of view, obviously, as you said, trying to encourage the NHS and the clinical settings, but also from ours in the private settings, of working with complementary therapists that have worked or are trained at degree level. Why is that important? Why is it important to encourage more people, from your perspective, into further study, and to encourage them to write up case studies and to get involved with sharing their experiences?
Um, I think I think if practice therapists are better educated,
Mm.
um, they will have more credibility with
Yeah,
with the medical establishment. I think that would be really important. Um, and yeah, and it makes for safer practice. But I think it just makes us more credible and gives us a firmer foundation to engage with the
yeah,
medical profession, and they will regard us as serious rather than um, inconsequential. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And so, looking ahead for you, Beverly, what's the kind of future, as you haven't really stood still in 3 decades?
Yeah, I thought when you finished when you pressed send on the book, that was it. But it opens up a whole new world of work and challenges and opportunity. So now I am really embarking on expanding my training provision, so that I can spread the word and
Mm,
train other people to do this work. So I'm really working. I do in-person workshops, trying to certainly around Europe. I do. I'm doing a whole load of webinar training coming up with various organizations this year.
amazing.
So that's just being put into place, and that's going to be my focus.
Yeah,
My clinic, obviously, since I finished my book, I've opened up 2 clinics. I'm hosted by other clinics. I don't want to
mm,
run a clinic of my own. I don't want that work. So I have clinics that focus on um, acupuncture clinics to help support people post-cancer treatment.
yeah.
The irony of that is now I'm treating more people undergoing active treatment than
Okay.
than before, but that's fine. I kind of have another book nagging away at the back of my
Okay.
mind. It's not going to be a big tome like this,
Yeah.
but that would be for next year. So this year it's focusing on increasing my training provision,
Mm.
and I do a lot of work with the lymphedema community. So I've got a project a couple of projects with them that I'm doing because I'm very keen on spreading the word of awareness about lymphedema. And this is we're recording this in Lymphedema Awareness Week, the
Okay.
first week of March. March the 6th is Lymphedema Awareness Day, World Lymphedema Day.
Mm.
I'm doing a big social media campaign around that and how
Fantastic.
acupuncture is safe and supportive treatment
Yeah.
for people with or at risk of lymphedema. So yeah, I'm busy,
Yeah. So it's not kicking
as
back
we
and
all
having a
are,
few
as we all
cocktails in
are.
the sun. Well,
Definitely
fantastic.
not.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so excited to see what sort of comes next, and yeah, do keep us abreast of the training opportunities, and we will share them with our community as well, because I think, you know, that does seem like an absolutely natural progression, doesn't it, of writing and having done so much practice and research within this very sort of specialized area to help directly teach and sort of mentor and shape and influence the practice of all of those of us in practice that are keen to sort of develop and deepen our own sort of experiences. So yeah, absolutely incredible work. And yes, good luck with that next book. They always say it's a bit like babies, isn't it? And kind of, you know, people forget too easily and then sort of go in for another. And it sounds like that, because I'm sure after writing that, I would have expected you to say, I'm not going to touch the idea of
Oh,
another book. But
I have been saying that. So this idea that it just came up before Christmas, and I thought, yeah, there needs to be a book about that. So I haven't broached the subject with my husband yet, who
yeah.
probably threatened divorce, but
Yes, yes, yes. Mine did that through the kick and study. It was kind of like I said I'd like to go on and do my sort of PhD, and he was just like, yes, not yet.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Indeed,
some
yeah.
sort of level and chance to sort of rebalance and recalibrate. But Beverley, it's an absolute joy to spend time with you and to hear about your incredible career, and more importantly, the incredible work you've done supporting people living with and beyond cancer. I'm sure that the outcomes of that are a pebble in a pond already, with people out there sort of you know, continuing to support people in their own clinics and practices as a result of your research, your ongoing narrative over the last few decades, and of course this incredible sort of book. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you come shine your amazingly bright, beautifully radiant light with us, and to hopefully inspire all the practitioners watching to kind of do more and to kind of start to think more about what they're doing, why they're doing it, the outcomes of that, and following through for that sort of progression, and to network more, to share more, and to develop their academic understanding and research. So thank you for being an incredible inspiration.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight. Thank you.